Well, joining me now to have a further look at today's papers is Harrison Griffiths, political commentator with Young Voices UK and international programmes manager for the Institute of Economic Affairs. Good morning, Harrison.
Good morning, James. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Let's begin with the big story overnight, which is, of course, the what appears to be another attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Can anything lower the temperature of US politics at the moment, do you think?
Yeah, no, it's very difficult to see how. I think you nailed it on the head, James, when you said no matter what you think of President Trump, I think everybody should be glad to see that he is safe and that we should have a democratic process in November that plays out and all Americans' voices are heard and nothing is done outside of that process to jeopardise the competition. As I understand from some American reports I was watching last night, this golf course in Marion County, Florida, that Trump's often at and that he owns, it's surrounded on three sides by incredibly busy roads, and the Secret Service have been worried for some time that this is something that's very difficult to secure. And so, I really hope that they're able to guarantee his security going forward, because it's twice that this has happened now, and it's becoming incredibly concerning.
You would have thought they will have to up his security again. I know they did after the assassination attempt in Pennsylvania in July. As a former president, you clearly get a lot of security, but not as much as you do when you are a serving president. So were he to win the White House back in November, his security would increase. But you would have thought, given we're in the middle of a presidential campaign, they're going to have to review it again.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly think so, but he as a major party nominee for president and a former president is probably one of the most secure people on the planet. The additional layers of security you get when you're a sitting president is often a virtue of the fact that you are frequently at extremely secure sites, such as the White House, for example. And so, it's very, very difficult to see how the Secret Service simply devoting more resources to Trump could make him more secure. That they very rarely leave a stone unturned if you look at the way that they go about trying to secure the people in their care. And so, it's difficult to see, and hopefully it won't infringe too much on, Trump's ability to wage a campaign or anything like that.
I suppose you can never make anyone 100% safe. Do you think this is going to have any impact on the presidential election, Harrison?
Well, interestingly, the assassination attempt on Trump in Pennsylvania very briefly gave him a bit of a poll bounce, but it didn't necessarily last very long. And lots of election commentators over in the US consider that the speech he made at the Republican National Convention a very short time after the assassination attempt was a bit of a wasted opportunity to create some goodwill. It was quite a divisive and fiery speech, as Trump's often known for. And really, in the rigmarole of the presidential contest, it's easy to forget that the assassination attempt was only a short time ago. I mean, any poll bounce for Trump faded away pretty quickly. So based on that, maybe not. But it's very difficult to say at this point. I wouldn't want to be in the business of forecasting American elections at the moment, because the last 8 years of American politics have been highly unpredictable, but we seem to be in a really unpredictable moment right now.
Yeah, far too close to call at the moment, it seems to be. Let's talk about Keir Starmer, who's going to be in Italy today. He's going to meet the Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, seeking to learn lessons about how the Italian government have dealt with illegal migration. And this is really interesting. So Giorgia Meloni's government have managed to successfully reduce the number of crossings in the Mediterranean by 62% over the past year. They've struck an arrangement with Albania under which up to 36,000 migrants are processed in 2 centres by Italian officials each year. Those whose asylum claims are rejected are sent to their home country. Those accepted are admitted to Italy. And clearly the issue of illegal migration, a big one for Keir Starmer. Obviously, we know what's been happening with small boat crossings over the Channel. There is some anger, it appears, from within parts of the Labour Party that he's meeting with a pretty controversial figure in Giorgia Meloni. But is he right to try and learn lessons from her, Harrison?
Well, possibly. We're yet to see really how the Italian offshoring policy is going to play out in the long run. When we're talking about somewhere like Albania as opposed to something like Rwanda, you can see how a similar type of arrangement would be more practical for the UK, particularly if it's in collaboration with Italy as neighbouring country to Albania and has long-standing ties to that part of the world. So I think we need to wait a little bit longer to see what exactly the Italian policy produces. But what we do know, I think, is regardless of whether we embrace a much more liberal immigration policy, as perhaps I'd like to see, or a much stricter one, as I think most people in the country probably would like to see, it's important that it's clear and well managed, so that we can reduce demand for small boat crossings. People often without a lot of money are paying somewhere between £500 and £5,000 for a place on a boat. It's not quite as simple as simply saying we'll smash the gangs. Demand is very high, and so if you don't have a system that delivers certain outcomes and can be accessed, as in that means giving people safe places to apply for asylum from, but it also means certain enforcement of decisions. If people are rejected for claims, they should be swiftly deported. All of that is going to help reduce demand, and for now it doesn't seem like there's much joined up thinking on those solutions.
An unnamed Labour MP is quoted in the Times this morning saying ultimately the government is going to have no choice but to do an offshore processing deal. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take them to get there. It's really interesting how, offshore processing, when it was first mooted, of, kind of finding a third country to deal with some of these assignment claims, was seen as very controversial. But increasingly, mainstream politicians all over the world, you've had, mainstream figures in Germany talking about doing something similar, are looking at this. There is a sense that actually what we've been talking about for the last few years in terms of small boat crossings over the Channel, that's just our iteration of what is increasingly a global problem. You look at how big an issue the border is, for example, in the US election, how many EU countries are grappling with illegal migration. This is a proper global problem now.
Absolutely. And I think it's inextricably linked to the sense that people feel immigration is chaotic and uncontrolled versus more controlled and regularised. I mean, you saw, for example, after Britain left the EU, that anti-immigration sentiment was on the decline perhaps because a lot of people felt that it would be more controlled. And since the images of the small boat crossings, of course, anti-immigration sentiment has risen very much again. Likewise in the US, when people see chaos at the Mexican border, it makes them more suspicious about immigration. And it also speaks, I think, to a capacity issue. When you have such large refugee inflows, particularly into countries in Europe which are economically stagnant in a lot of cases anyway, and which have very limited capacity to actually house and process people for various reasons, you're inevitably going to see more radical solutions posed, and indeed the Overton window moving.
Let's talk about the Liberal Democrats, because it is their conference at the moment, and Ed Davey apparently is targeting the blue wall, and he wants to replace the Conservatives as the official opposition after the next election. Is that realistic, Harrison?
Well, you know what? It's happened once in this country before, hasn't it? We have had great political realignments that disestablished one of the two main parties, was indeed the Liberals in favour of the Labour Party. And so it's not completely out of the question. The problem is that Britain's electoral system makes it very difficult for a party that's not one of the big two to break through. You actually see this with the Liberal Democrats, who are incredibly vote efficient when it comes to first past the post. So, when you look at the seats that they won in or came very close to, naturally their national vote share is very highly concentrated there. But if you look at maps of concentrations of votes in the UK, there doesn't seem to be an awful lot of room for growth at the moment. So I suppose that they would need to do something, whether it's a group of politically important people in the UK. I mean, they're already kind of a bit of a party of pensioners and NIMBYs in some way, or whether it's about embracing a new type of ideology that's got a lot of popularity. That they have some expanding to do if they want to achieve that goal.
Harrison, always appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, James.
It's Harrison Griffiths there, political commentator with Young Voices UK and international programmes manager for the Institute of Economic Affairs.